the interest rates are going to crash the insurance companies, the hedge funds, and the banks. And we're going to have hyperinflation at the same time because the value of the dollar is going to go down.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty in Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for May 30th through June 6th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we feature the 2023 quarter-ounce Noah's Ark silver coins at $3.25 over melt per coin, and Ital Preziosi 10-ounce silver bars at just $3.49 over spot per ounce. Minted by the famed Geiger Mint in Germany, the quarter-ounce Noah's Ark silver coins are sovereign coins of Armenia with a face value of 100 dram, and a great way to get fractional silver for a significantly lower premium than you would normally pay. Next, our Ital Preziosi 10-ounce silver bars not only maintain a great level of liquidity, but also boast one of our lowest premiums in several months, at $3.49 over spot per ounce. They come individually numbered, are available in any quantity, and come 50 to a box. Our specials this week are IRA eligible, and if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us, and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah K. Johnson with Liberty in Finance. And back with us today, one of our viewers' favorite guests, Bob Moriarty, Marine, naval aviator, and financial author, and founder of the websites 321gold.com and 321energy.com. Bob, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, welcome back. You were sounding really terrible yesterday. I'm glad that you're okay.
Getting over a little cold here, getting better here. I did want to first discuss the Fed's rate hikes that we've been seeing, and this has obviously been causing a lot of issues in the economy, the banking system. Now, the IMF recently came out and said that to really keep inflation under control, the Fed is going to have to keep rates higher for longer. Your perspective on this?
We've discussed that at length several times, and nothing has changed other than the fact that a lot of people are starting to wake up to the fact that the Fed has mousetrapped itself. When you go to 0% interest, effectively you're giving money away, and people do some very foolish things. And then when you raise rates, okay, the people who invested in really safe things like 30-year bonds look at the value of the bonds and realize they're down 30, 40, 50% in some cases. So it doesn't show up until they raise rates. However, the damage is done when they lowered the rates. And the IMF has come out. Now, I can't tell you whether it's accurate or not. I'm not a big believer in the official narrative. But the IMF has said they're going to have to hold rates at 5.25% to 5.5% through the end of 2024. And in simple terms, that is absolutely catastrophic. Now, as of last fall, the British gilts, their highest rated government bonds, had lost 53%, and interest rates in the UK have gone back to what they were then. So there's some just really scary things. And regardless of what Jamie Dimon says and Janet Yellen and Powell says, we're in the eye of a hurricane.
The rising of rates we've seen, the banking crisis. This viewer wants to know about insurance companies as well, because it seems like they're in a similar situation as banks. Does Bob think that the insurance companies will collapse since they operate on the same principles as banks? Does he expect it to be at the same time? Seems like cracks are beginning to show already.
Strange enough, and he didn't pick up on one thing that's ultra critical to understand. Now, go back to the question, do I think that the insurance companies are going to suffer the same fate? And the answer is absolutely yes. Everyone who is investing in high-grade bonds, believing they were safe, made a giant mistake because they're not safe. Now, to give you an idea, if you were borrowing money at 2% on a 30-year mortgage, and the interest rates have gone up 7% on a 30-year mortgage, you are now paying 1.5 times more in interest over the 30 years than you're paying for the property itself. So the rise in interest rates is catastrophic for banks. It's catastrophic for insurance companies. It's actually catastrophic for hedge funds, and it's catastrophic for commercial real estate and residential real estate. It is the perfect storm, and I cannot stress enough that there is no escaping it. We're going to have to go through it. It's going to be a force 10 hurricane, and everyone is going to get hurt somewhat, but it's going to be far worse in 2008, far worse than 2000, and it's going to be comparable or worse than 1929.
You mentioned how things are going to get a lot worse in the financial system for obviously banks, insurance companies, hedge funds. There are two viewers' questions that are essentially asking the same thing. The first viewer asks, please describe the worst case scenario for the U.S. excluding nuclear war. And the second viewer asks, are we going to end up in a depression? So essentially, how bad do you think it could get?
Here's what's crazy. I absolutely would not exclude nuclear war, okay, which really scares me. And you and I were talking off camera. The United States doesn't know how to admit it has lost a war, and the U.S. and NATO have lost the war in Ukraine, and they're getting desperate, and they could do something really stupid up to and including nuclear war. So don't reject nuclear war as not being possible. It's more possible now than it's been in my entire lifetime. But going back to the economic situation, what we've got, I believe it's going to be far worse than 1929. Now, at the time of Germany reuniting East Germany and West Germany, I think that was 1989 or 1990, that literally helped create the crash in the Soviet Union, and as the Soviet Union burst apart into pieces. The Russians had been through bad times, so they could cope. And Americans have been taught everything's just wonderful and the government will take care of you. And the problem is Americans are not prepared, and they should be prepared. I mean, literally to the point of having fuel in the car, excess cash, and food for 6 months or a year. We are going to go through an exceptionally dangerous time because most Americans are not prepared. You've been warned. There are some brilliant people talking about economic collapse coming, and people need to learn and they need to listen. The banks are in the most dangerous position they've been in going back to 1931 and 1932. It's an exceptionally dangerous period of time, and it's going to affect everyone. And the question about the depression, we are not going to go into a depression. We're in a depression now that people don't realize.
And what signs are you seeing right now that we are actually in a depression?
Unemployment. Okay. The stock market is an accident waiting to happen. Now, I got out of the Marine Corps in early 1970, and I had some cash, and everybody was telling me, you got to invest in the stock market. And there was something called the Nifty 50, and this was Avon and IT&T and AT&T and Ling Temco Vought. And these were the favorite stocks. And if you looked at the overall stock market, you realize the overall stock market had been tanking for years, but the Nifty 50 were doing just fine. And then in early 1970, they cratered. And of course, the market went into a crash and lasted for 17 years. There are 7 stocks holding the Dow and the S&P up today. When those 7 stocks go, people are going to realize the stock market's an exceptionally dangerous place to be. But we're going to have a situation where we're not only going to have a catastrophe financially, we're going to lose the benefit of the world's reserve currency. And Americans have no idea of how that's going to change things. But we're going to have hyperinflation in the United States, even if the rest of the world is doing just fine, because the value of the dollar is going to plummet. Now, whether that's next week or whether it's 5 years from now, I don't know. But I know the U.S. can lose its position as the world's reserve currency.
Tom L. wants to know your perspective on how the national debt plays into this.
Hey, look, we're in Alice in Wonderland, okay? It's so goofy that nobody realizes what's going on. What did Congress just do about the national debt? They said, look, we don't want a national debt ceiling. You spend as much as you want to, and then in January of 2025, we'll set the debt ceiling then. I read this and I went, holy cow, okay. What do you mean there's no debt ceiling? So literally, it's been pure theatrics, okay. It was a game on both the Democrats and the Republican side, and the Republicans just totally caved in. But the key is there is no longer a debt ceiling. Congress can spend as much as it wants, and we're going to set the debt ceiling in a year and a half.
It definitely seems like it's a very bad situation here. Tom wants to know, how long can this go on? Giving the example of Japan, do you see just the U.S. kind of slowly fading away in a controlled manner?
Yes, fading away, but it's uncontrolled and it's very rapid. And the really interesting thing is about Japan is they had their high point in 1989 and had this totally irrational system ever since financially, where the Bank of Japan owns all of the debt of Japan. And people have been forecasting catastrophe in Japan for years and years and years. And somehow they just kind of plod along. Japan has a demographic time bomb, which is part of the factor. But the Japanese trust the Japanese government, which is a real mistake. I mean, I don't know how anybody could trust any government. But Japan's gone along just fine.
No, keeping on the focus of Japan for a moment here, we have a viewer, Anthony, wanting to know why there has been no news on the Bank of Japan manipulating the front end of their yield curve to prevent collapse.
That's a really good question, because the real question is there anything that we're being told that's the truth? And the answer is no. Everything we're being told is a lie. And the Bank of Japan trying to manipulate the yield curve and having the new finance minister come in, it's catastrophic for Japan, which is why nobody wants to talk about it. Well, what we do in the United States today, which is absolutely marvelous, is that if it's bad news, we just don't talk about it.
That's a good point there. We have another viewer's question on kind of geopolitics, and we've covered this briefly in another interview, but if you could kind of reiterate for viewers your opinion on this. When it comes to the BRICS nations, Paul wants to know, how do you think the United States will counter or respond to a BRICS gold-backed currency, where obviously some people are thinking it's going to be more like commodity-backed? How long do you think the dollar in its current state can hold against a new competitor for world reserve status?
That's a really excellent question. And I don't actually know anyone, including me, who has a really good answer. I think we're all just kind of guessing and hoping. The U.S. dollar will retain a lot of power for a long time just because there's so much debt that's in U.S. dollars now. However, the value of the dollar is going to go down, and I see the latest thing about the debt resolution being catastrophic. I think it will incorporate the worst of all worlds, where the interest rates are going to crash the insurance companies, the hedge funds, and the banks, and we're going to have hyperinflation at the same time because the value of the dollar is going to go down.
So does it have to do a lot with the BRICS countries, creating this world reserve currency, or is it more problems internally with interest rates that are just going to collapse the system?
Actually, both. Okay, and that's a good point. BRICS is still an unknown, and what's really terrifying, or should be terrifying to the politicians in the United States, is not the BRICS talking about an alternative world reserve currency. It's the fact so many people have signed up and said, we want to join. We want to be part of your club. NATO is a club, okay? And it's essentially a white club. And the United States rules it, and all of the rest of the countries are like little lapdogs to the United States, and they obey even when it's not in their own interest. The sanctions that they put on in February of last year were catastrophic for Europe. I mean, literally are going to destroy Europe financially, and they still did it. Okay, so we've got this interesting situation. BRICS doesn't actually have to do anything. It's the fact that they exist that is such a danger. And I would hope, and I think the next month is very scary, I would hope that NATO and Europe would recognize they have destroyed Ukraine and said, okay, we need to sit down and talk to Russia. And actually what Russia was demanding in December of 2021 was quite reasonable, and we're going to give it to them because the alternative is nuclear war.
No, when it comes to the BRICS countries, one thing that I hear often is that, they're insignificant economies and all that. But if you really look at the size of them, when it comes to purchasing power parity, BRICS actually surpassed in total GDP the G7. So it's like this isn't an insignificant block of countries here. And actually, it's becoming one of the biggest block of countries out there.
I was talking about a fraternity, NATO being a fraternity. The same thing is true of the World Economic Forum. It's a fraternity. And BRICS is kind of a fraternity, but it's a fraternity of countries who recognize the political leadership and the banking system of the West has been bad for them, bad for their countries, and they want an alternative. And here's what I find that's so funny. Nobody knows what BRICS is going to do. I mean, I can't tell you what they're going to do. I know they'll come up with some kind of reserve currency, but I don't know exactly how they're going to do it or how it's going to work or who's going to be in BRICS. But the question is, do you want to align yourself with the countries that are interested in growing and succeeding and having peace in the world, or do you want to align yourself with the people who brought NATO into Libya? And now you can go to NATO, or not to NATO, you can go to Tripoli in Libya and you can buy a slave. You cannot point at anything Europe and NATO has done that is positive for peace. And strange enough, we've got Lavrov of Russia and we've got the Chinese. They're running around getting people to talk to each other getting people to work with each other. And I'm going, don't people realize that's exactly what you look for in leadership? Leadership is supposed to lead, okay? They're supposed to do things that seemingly unpopular at first to make life better for their citizens. And NATO's doing exactly the opposite. And the BRICS countries, and the 85 countries that want to be part of BRICS, said, we would rather be part of the winning team than the losing team. And I fully support that.
In some respect, how can people on a financial level be part of the winning team? We might not want to, in some respect, like move to these BRICS countries or anything like that, but we can, in some sense, copy in our financial lives what others are doing. So how do we be part of the winning team in this case?
Well, strange enough, and this is, again, a choice between alternatives. The alternatives are paper assets or real assets, and I would highly encourage everyone to invest in real assets, and I believe the BRICS are going to do exactly that. I've said many times that gold is an insurance policy against financial chaos. It is money, and there's 2 or 3 people who talk about in the comments, no, gold isn't an insurance policy, gold is money. Well, yeah, gold is money, but it can function as an insurance policy. And I certainly, if there was ever a time in history where you needed an insurance policy against chaos, it would be right now.
We have a few viewers' questions on precious metals. Blake is wanting to know, do you have any recommendations around choosing a depository to store your gold in? And I guess this is kind of assuming that you want to store your metals in a depository and not your own possession, but your perspective on all that.
Strangely enough, you just raised a really good issue. Do I think the idea of a depository is good? Absolutely. I have a depository that I deal with, and some of my gold and silver are on deposit with the depository. Alternatively, at the same time, I have physical gold and silver because I want to have some physical gold and silver as an insurance policy. I've got enough that would cover me for at least 6 months. So I think both are good. It's not an either or situation. But one of the things that I never, ever do is recommend things where I would be using my reputation to talk about something that I don't necessarily know. If you're going to pick a depository, pick an honest one.
Yeah, I think there are some certain things that we look at. We only partner with depositories that are segregated, audited, and allocated. So no like pool accounts and stuff like that, which I think when it comes to investing in precious metals, you want to reduce as much counterparty risk as possible, and having pooled accounts or anything like that just adds more risk, it seems like, into your investment.
Yeah, you have to remove counterparty risk. The beauty about gold and silver is there is zero counterparty risk of anything that's in your position, and a relatively small amount of counterparty risk by putting on depository with someone else. But frankly, banks started in the first place as being depositories for precious metals. Okay, the whole fractional reserve system was based around people depositing gold, and had been issued paper certificates for it. But certainly, I would suggest to your listeners, understand counterparty risk and do not go with whoever's the flashiest. Go with somebody with good reputation. And frankly, with the internet now, you ought to be able to figure out who the good guys are and who the bad guys are.
Definitely. We have a viewer question again here about silver. How does silver price react to a prolonged recession? And obviously, it sounds like you're looking for more than a recession here, but your perspective on the economic woes that we're going to see and how silver may react.
That's a really good question. And luckily, I'm a student of history. I mean, Barbara died, and unfortunately, I got nothing better to do than wander around the web. It's a good question because it's potentially very dangerous. Nobody knows this, But the Dow crashed starting in October 1929, and by 1932, silver actually went down to 29 cents an ounce. They were giving silver away because there was no demand for silver whatsoever. It was so far under the cost of production that the United States government literally came out with a silver tax stamp that if you were going to sell silver in the United States from a mine, you had to have one of these tax stamps. And the government would buy silver from you for $1.29. So in the Depression of 1929 to 1937, the value of silver dropped. I believe, and it's just my opinion, that in relative terms, silver will go up compared to gold. I think silver and platinum are the cheapest metals right now. They're what I'm putting my money into. I like silver, but it also attracts more flim-flam artists than any other metal. There's a lot of silver bugs who are literally nuttier than a fruitcake. Okay, they're convinced silver is going to go to $500 an ounce all by itself. And the number one silver guru was running around in the year 2000, saying that by December of 2000, there would be no more above ground silver available. And I wrote to him, and I said, what do you mean? Okay, that's crazy. We're not going to run out of silver. There's tons of silver around. And of course, he turned out to be dead wrong, and I turned out to be dead right. There have been 50 billion ounces of silver produced in world history. There is a lot of silver still around, but at 90 to 1, it's relatively cheap compared to gold.
What do you see as a realistic performance for silver then? It sounds like you're bullish, but you're not uber bullish on it. So what is a more realistic outlook?
No, I am uber bullish, but as far as picking points, I can't pick a point. If silver got down to 30 to 1 to gold, I would be selling silver. And anything above 80 to 1 for silver, I'm a buyer of silver. Silver is cheap. I don't ever pick price. Lots of people do, but there's lots of people smarter than me. I don't know how to pick price. I just think in relative terms, silver will go up compared to gold.
Bill is wanting to know, what are the chances that the government would put unrealized gains tax on gold to discourage stacking?
Very, very possible. It's important to understand that our government is in the hands of people who are nuttier than Fruit Loops. Okay, these people are goofy. They screw up everything they do. They're totally, absolutely clueless. The United States, if you go back to 1775, we have never been run by a bigger band of fools than we are today. And the one thing that you can guarantee is they're going to do a lot of stupid things. What they haven't taken into account of is there's 330 million Americans and there's 399 million guns. So they need to be very careful because they don't have the power that they believe they have.
We have one comment from Curtis here. I think the real gold in this interview is Bob's golden wisdom. Thanks and God bless. So, Bob, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate your time as always. Where can our viewers find you online? And also, we'll put your Amazon author page in the description of this video. If people would like to check out your books, tell us a bit about that.
Okay, and I'm actually working on another book right now because I look at the plans of the World Economic Forum as being catastrophic. And I'm trying to come up with a solution to the debt problem We know there's going to be a catastrophic collapse in the $305 trillion from debt that's never going to get paid. And I'm suggesting that a jubilee would be a better idea. But you can find me at 321 Gold or 321 Energy or on Amazon or on YouTube.
We love to have you end with a story, obviously, about your chickens or your dogs. So tell us a bit about facts today.
Well, chickens, frankly, are boring. Okay. I like the eggs, but chickens are boring. Facts, on the other hand, is never boring. Facts has a sense of humor. And I was asleep in bed, and we were having a thunderstorm, and I woke up about 3 or 4 in the morning, and there were 2 paws on my chest. And I thought about it for a minute. I thought, when I went to bed, there weren't any paws on my chest. Where did these paws come from? So I kind of tracked down the paws, and they were Fax. And Fax was a little bit upset about the thunderstorm, and he just wanted some reassurance that I was okay. Now, whether he was checking on me or whether he was trying to, Dad, could I come up and sleep in bed with you? I'm very nervous. But Fax... I've said this before. Fax has a sense of humor. And he'll wake me up at 7 or 8 when it's time for him to go out. And he'll start nuzzling my arm. So I'll reach out and I'll start scratching his head. And he just thinks that's the most wonderful thing in the world. I never knew this, but dogs love to have their head scratched. But Fax is kind of a tricky dog. I'll start off, of course, I got my eyes closed. I'm doing it all by feel, and I'm sitting here scratching his head. And after about 5 minutes, I think about my hand, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. That doesn't feel like a dog's head. It feels a lot more like a dog's butt. In fact, will have turned himself around, so now I'm scratching his butt. I go, wait a minute, I don't think I signed up for that. I signed up for scratching your head. But for people who are lonely, I'm certainly lonely, border collies are the most interesting, intelligent dogs in the world. And they're a lot of fun to have around. I wish somebody had told me that 50 or 60 years ago.
All right. Well, Bob, thank you so much for that. As always, once again, thank you so much for your time as well, and God bless.
Okay, and I'm glad you're looking better.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.